Welcome to the second edition of the Dancer Perspective, which is a brand new virtual dance talk series that we've started and is led by our very own Houston Ballet dancers. Tonight's topic is going to be injuries and recovery. But we're so glad to see you all in this digital format. Just to let you know how we're going to organize tonight, we're going to have some discussion, and that's going to be led by Houston Ballet soloist Erin Sharratt and a panel of our dancers. And I'll let Erin introduce them in just a second. And then we'll answer a few questions that you all submitted already. At any time during tonight's discussion, please feel free to submit a question using the chat feature in Zoom, and we'll see if we have time to get to some of those. A couple other notes, please do keep your microphone muted. It really helps with background noise so that we can hear everyone clearly. Also, if you're not familiar with Zoom, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you can change back and forth between either speaker view or gallery view. Please feel free to leave your cameras on. We love to see your faces, but you don't have to. I think that's all of our notes, housekeeping notes for tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin and let him start our discussion.
Hi, everybody. So we're here to speak about injuries today, and I am joined by principal dancer Chun Wai Chan, principal dancer Karina González, quarter ballet dancer Kellen Hornbuckle, quarter ballet dancer Madison Russo, and quarter ballet dancer Saul Newport.
Hello, everybody.
So today we're going to be, there's a wide variety of things that we'll be speaking about as far as injuries go. I'll start off with a personal injury of my own and some things that I went through, and it was actually a question that we received if any of us had specifically had knee injury, a knee surgery, and I've had two. My first one was when I was 16, and it was a meniscus tear, and that was pretty easy one, and I was very young, so it was pretty easy for me to come back mentally and everything. But then about 4 years ago, when I was 24, I had a pretty much complete reconstruction on my knee, and was not really sure if I'd ever dance again, which was very difficult to kind of work through and get over. The fact that maybe your career is over at 24 isn't what you want to hear. But obviously I made it and I've returned, and yeah, so that's where I'll start. The specific question was if anybody had gone through, the young lady that submitted it had an ACL tear, and she was wondering, you know, how do you get over the fear of coming back, especially doing steps that, or the step that you injured yourself doing. And there's no real answer to that because I think everyone deals with something like that very differently. For myself, it wasn't a specific step that hurt me, so I didn't really have to, jump over that hurdle. I just kind of, once the pain wasn't there anymore in my recovery, I felt pretty strong to do everything I needed to do, but that's different for everybody on our panel tonight. So there are some dancers that have hurt themselves doing a specific step, and it's definitely something hard to get over when that happens. So we'll probably answer that later on in our discussion. There's one dancer specifically that I know told me that that's something that they're kind of scared of still. So with having said that, I'm actually now going to change the topic, and I'm going to go to something which is a rather strange incident, I think, that you don't really think of will ever happen to you as a dancer. So I will let Chun Wai Chan tell you what happened to him and really how it changed his approach from the moment that it happened to where he's at now. And it happened during a performance. So I think that's a great place to start with. Chun Wai, do you want to take it away and kind of tell everybody what happened?
Yes. So Erin, just to make sure, are you talking about the cramping or some injuries?
No, the cramping.
Okay.
No.
Here we go. So that's a pretty dramatic moment of my life. I had during some small injury the first few years in the company, and that was consistently happened to myself. That's only because I wasn't paying attention to take care of myself, and I was only focused on what should I do maximize my ability. So that just happens, but I learned in the first few years. And then what Aaron was talking about, that traumatic happened to me, it was I cramped on stage. That was something that hurts a lot, but also it hurts mentally too. It took me over a year to recover mentally. I think okay, so let's talk about the beginning, how it happens. Because that time I was the first time doing Swan Lake as principal, and my parents happened to be in town to see me doing the Prince. It was very happy. I was very exciting to show my show to them, and it just lack of rest and too much excitement in my body that I want to show them. And it wasn't, and turned out the show, it wasn't how I actually practiced. So I pushed a lot without preparing. And then after first act, it started to cramp. And there's a no turn back, because there's a 3-act ballet. And in the beginning of the first, in the end of the first act, you realize you start to cramp a little bit. The only thing you can do is to calm yourself down. And then during my solo, it really started to happen that I could not jump. It was the moment that I was like, well, what can I do? Because I know if I keep pointing my foot, I would land on my foot, and without releasing my foot, and that would become a serious injury. So I walked off stage, and that was something that I can only happen in my nightmare. Something that a nightmare could only happen. So a few days later, it was great that I had another opportunity. It was planned to do another show 2 days later, but it was very grateful that I was able to do it a day later. So still, it was hard, because what if this happened again? But I finished the show. It was very thankful, and I was grateful for everybody's support, both mentally and physically. And after that, we have to do it in Dubai. In 4 months later, it still happened in my head, but I know what I can do is to not fear. Instead of fear, I was turning myself to manage myself energy, my energy from the top of the tour. And that day, what should I do? What should I not do? And make sure I drink enough water. And that way I could overcome the fear. And actually something that hurts me so much, it became my strongest point, that I would always take care of myself. It taught me a lot. And without that, of course I can prevent from the beginning, but that really taught me something, that I need to take care of myself from the top to the end in order to finish a show.
Great, yeah, and I think that just to clarify, this wasn't like a small calf cramp or something. I think we probably all experienced something like that. He was experiencing pretty much like a full body cramp from the legs down, which is obviously much worse. A calf cramp may happen in a turn or even in a jump or something, and you can kind of shake it off, and hopefully just it doesn't happen again. And then as far as the mental thing, how it became his strength, I think that that's a big thing about injuries, is that if you do push yourself to get through them, to get over the hurdles that we all face, we normally come out, and I always say this to young dancers when they get injured, I try to anyways, if I can contact them on Facebook or Instagram, or if I have their phone number or something, I try to be like, you'll come out of this stronger, don't worry too much. Because I think that's the biggest thing. And you appreciate what you have so much more. So after my second knee surgery, where I was considering my career being over, the next time I was on stage, it meant so much more to me. And since then, I've truly appreciated and enjoyed every show much more than I did before that, because you kind of take it for granted. It's just something you do, it's your job. or even when you're training, it's just something you do. So I think that was a good and a big thing for Chun Wai, because yeah, I know that was hard for him to get over, and still I'm sure it creeps up in his mind every once in a while, right, Chunner?
Yes, it's true. But what I can do is to make sure I keep my stamina during this quarantine, and like train like how I usually would. And then when the performance starts, I will really make sure to not do those stuff that I would make myself cramp and more too excited. I always I need to meditate before the show to calm myself energy, because I'm hyper energy, and I will save that on the stage.
Yeah, great. And then, so I guess I'm going to jump to Madison Russo now, who experienced something that was difficult for her, which she got injured in her apprentice year. So that's your first year as a professional dancer. You don't have much experience. You're kind of trying to prove yourself still, and you don't have the job security necessarily as a more experienced dancer, and what that was like for her to go through. Like I said, in her being young in her first season with a professional ballet company. Matt.
Hi. So yeah, a little bit of backstory about my injury and why I ended up deciding to go through with getting surgery for it. I came to the academy when I was 15, and within my first year of the academy, I developed tendonitis in my FHL tendon, which is essentially your big toe tendon. So you use it to point your foot and walk too. So it's used a lot in ballet. And throughout my time in the academy, going into then the second company, I had issues with it on and off. It would flare up, and then it would be fine for a couple months, and it would flare up again. And so then last year, my apprentice year, it got so bad to the point where actually when we were in Dubai, like Chun Wai was saying, trying to get through Swan Lake was just like, I really don't know how I got through it. I was taking 4 Advil, like at every meal, basically, to try and get the inflammation and swelling down, and just to get through the shows. I do not recommend it for anybody out there. But after we came back from tour, you know, obviously the idea of surgery was something that I didn't want to think about, with it being my apprentice year, and, you know, just wanting to get a core contract for the next season. I was like, oh my God, like, how is this going to affect my job and all sorts of stuff. But it was just so bad. And it was to the point where after speaking with the PT and speaking with Dr. Varner, who's our orthopedic surgeon with Houston Methodist, I was just like, I have to get this done. So I ended up getting it done after Nutcracker of last season. And it took me about 4 months to fully recover from it and get back all my strength. But I dealt with it for so long, and it had become such an issue to where I was like, I have to get this done no matter what the outcome was. And obviously mentally that was a lot for me, with the thought of like, will this affect my job? It was a lot, but I'm obviously very happy with the decision, and I've definitely come out stronger from it. 1, with not having any pain, and 2, just learning to work through the recovery process and everything. So yeah.
And do you think now that you're not dealing with the pain, you're actually able to work harder and improve at a steadier rate?
Definitely. You know, it's obviously, it was hard at first because it was a different kind of pain after coming back from surgery. My foot felt tight in other areas. So pretty much having to loosen everything back out after being in a boot for so long was definitely a challenge. But now being able to do things that I couldn't do before without pain is just something that I'm so thankful for.
Okay. And something that Madison kind of just touched on, and it was a question that we got, have any of us ever, and any dancer can chime in on this one and tell their story, but have any of us ever danced through an injury, either performance or a whole year long? And I think that the answer for probably every single one of us is yes. At some point in our careers, even though you're not supposed to, you have to sometimes. Especially like with me, I was dancing on my knee far longer than I should have, just because we didn't know what it was. So we just thought it was a pain. Then it got to the point where I couldn't dance anymore. And I danced for about 4 months through several shows and everything in excruciating pain, just thinking that maybe it was really bad tendonitis or something that it did not end up being. So like I said, I think that we've all experienced something like that, dancing through injuries, or coming back too quickly from injuries or something like that, that has not been the best experience. So if anyone would like to go ahead and take it away with that one, that'd be great. I mean, yeah, anybody? Karina?
Uh, um, I think as a dancer, we deal with pain constantly. But I think what I have learned is that what the pain means is an injury pain, or it's just a muscle. Are you tired? Are you just overworked? And I think that's, I can say that I have been blessed and lucky not to have a major injuries, but I can lie to say that I haven't had pain. For example, I remember last Nutcracker, I was opening night, and like 2 days before my back went out. I don't even know if you guys knew, that's a secret. I like to keep secret. But I just remember telling Connor, then I was like, don't lift my leg too high because I can't really go, over 90 degrees. And I remember we're so incredible lucky to have a team at Houston Ballet that with amazing athletic trainers, that they're there for us in every show during work hours. And I remember finishing that rehearsal, and I went straight to Karina, which is our current athletic trainer. And I told her, I'm like, I'm really, really worried that this is gonna get worse for the performance. And of course, she kind of helped with massages, with hair on hand therapy, and I think that's something that we all go through our regular days. It's just knowing then how much can you push when you have pain, or you have to stop. Thankfully, I haven't have I have been lucky to continue, even if it's like a small injury, but also I think we're very lucky to have a great team that keep us going and dancing during our season.
Yeah, very much. And I've experienced similar. I've danced through my back being out several times, and it's not fun, but you usually can manage. Sometimes you can't, and then you get other things, hamstring strains. You pull your calf a little. For guys, biceps and stuff when you're doing a lot of partnering. So yeah, there are just a lot of things like Karina was saying, that they're pain, but they're not necessarily an injury that dancing through it is going to make it too much worse. Sometimes you'll be told you shouldn't, obviously, if you have a physical therapist or a doctor working with you. And that's what we're so lucky with, to always have an athletic trainer on site. But yeah, any other stories about having to dance through? Because I know that some people have been dancing on it. Oh, Kellen, yeah.
That's me. My injury story is kind of a lot of that. So I got a stress fracture in my right shin in 2017, and that was the beginning of my HP2 year. And at the time, it wasn't too bad. I was told that I could keep dancing as long as I was careful with jumps, and I was like, okay, cool, great. And then as HP2 went on, it was closer to when I wanted to get a contract. So I didn't want to stop, but my shin was getting worse. But then once I got my contract, I decided that I would take the first 3 months of my apprentice year off to let it heal. And I did that, and then I started doing PT, and I still had a little pain, but it was like normal at the time. And I managed to just keep pushing through my apprentice year, managing with PT, like getting massages, doing whatever I could. And then the October of my first core year, I got an x-ray to see how my shin was doing, and it had gotten a lot worse. They found more fractures around the original fracture. It had just gotten deeper, just bad all around. So Dr. Varner told me that my options were to take a whole year off, like 12 months of doing nothing and then starting back and seeing how I feel, or get a surgery done and be back in 3 to 4 months. So I had a really hard time choosing between the two because I wanted to get in this like studio and I wanted to be a part of the company. So I decided to get the surgery, and it felt more like active to help the problem. And I got a intermedullary rod in my tibia, which is a titanium rod that is on the inside of my shin and a screw along the side that just holds it in place. And that was about 6-7 months ago that I got that done. So yeah.
And
that's my story.
What's it like for you to have the rod in your leg now? Do you ever really feel it? Or I have 3 screws in my knee, and
Yeah.
I know sometimes they act up, especially with weather and stuff.
Yeah, I can actually feel the screw that's on the top that goes across my shin. You can feel the head of the screw, which is really weird. At first, when I like first had the surgery, I could like towards the bottom of my shin, I don't know, it's such a strange, it was so weird because you knew mentally that there was something inside of your leg, which is weird already. So you like, I don't know, it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. And we just got a question, I believe I read, that asked, what do we mean by our backs went out? And for me, I have 2 bulging discs in my low back. And sometimes I will do a step, usually it's like a pike forward or like lifting improperly or something like that. I don't deal with it too much anymore, but when I was younger and still strengthening, it would quote unquote go out pretty frequently actually. And it would kind of shut me down for about 2 to 3 days where I just couldn't bend forward. People deal with backs going out and stuff like that differently. Some people is the sciatica nerve. Others like a muscle spasm, they'll consider their back is out. But for me personally, I have 2 bulging discs. I don't know when Karina said that her back went out exactly what that meant, but for me, that's what happens. My discs will, I guess, slip and kind of cause a bad muscle spasm.
Yeah, I think for me it was a muscle spasm. And I remember she also noticed that my hips were so tight, that also was making my back pain uneven. So what the therapy was a lot of massage and trying to balance me out, and I think that's what I was feeling, especially for arabesque, to lift my leg. So I think with a couple of good massages and exercise, it can get better in only a few days.
Yeah, and I've noticed that if you're doing a ballet or a part where you have to do a lot of something to one side, then exactly what Karina just explained will happen, and you'll be uneven. I've seen the chiropractor several times in my career to get readjusted and realigned, and that was actually another one of the questions that was submitted: is do we do any alternative therapy like acupuncture, massage, chiropractic? And the answer is like yes. If we need it, we do. I think we all get massages pretty regularly, or probably not as much as we want. But yeah, I know a lot of people like chiropractor. There's also something that our athletic trainer does, which is called dry needling, which is kind of, they take acupuncture needles and they kind of like jam them in and out of the muscle that they're triggering.
So good.
So yeah, Kellen likes it.
It helps a lot. It's helped me a lot, like a lot.
Yeah, I was actually dealing with really bad tendonitis in one of my Achilles once again when we were in Dubai. It seems like we were all injured in Dubai. But I was dealing with some bad tendonitis, and pretty much any downtime I had, I would have our athletic trainer dry needling me just to make it through the shows. So yeah, that we definitely do seek alternative therapy to our normal everyday workouts and warm-ups and everything. And yeah, so going back to something that came up earlier, which was how do you get over the fear of doing the step that hurts you? I'm going to go to Saul Newport, who actually expressed that to me when I was talking to him about this. So take it away, Saul.
Yeah, so in October last year, I was just in a Nutcracker rehearsal, and I did a step, entrelace, and I pointed my foot on the way up, and then I didn't unpoint it on the way down, so I landed on the top part of my foot, and there was a big crack, and everybody in the room said that they heard it, but I actually fractured my fifth metatarsal, which was quite a traumatic experience for me because prior to that I hadn't had any other injuries. I was really fortunate, and I hardly ever danced through pain, kind of through my training. So just out of the blue that this happened, and then it took me 3 months for the bone to heal properly, and then another 2 months to get back to full dancing and jumping. And through the recovery, it was all okay until the jumping, and it was especially the same jump that I did when it cracked. So going, I guess, through that mentally was definitely a challenge, and just kind of learning how to trust your body again to know that it will do what it's meant to do was definitely the hardest part for me, and just making sure that it was all healed up kind of before I pushed it too far was really important for me, so that I knew that the bone was healed before I could then try and do the jumps that I guess kind of were a little bit scary and a bit traumatic when it happened. But yeah.
And you're still kind of recovering from it. Would you consider yourself back 100%, or how as far as, because this pandemic kind of hit while you were still working your way back?
Yes,
right?
Yeah. So I started jumping in February, and then obviously Corona happened in March. So yeah, I was only back for a couple of weeks. So I wouldn't say I was fully back, and I haven't performed on stage yet in a dancing role. I was just in Sleeping Beauty doing walk-on roles and things. So yeah, I'm definitely still on that kind of road to full recovery.
All right. And then I know personally you missed all of Nutcracker, which is, I feel like, a tough time for a young dancer to miss, because that's a lot of performance opportunity. We do 40 shows almost of Nutcracker every season. And I know that I luckily never missed a run of Nutcracker. And I know that especially when I was young, I probably would have been pretty frustrated and upset to miss all that opportunity and experience that I would have gained. Has that affected you? Has it affected you at all? Mentally, what was that like, going through missing our biggest performance opportunity chunk of the season?
Yeah. Well, this was my first year in the core, so I was really looking forward to some great performance opportunities, especially in the Nutcracker. But not being able to perform meant that I had all this time. So I just watched as many shows as I could. I just kind of snuck in the back and watched from the front, which was really a really great opportunity that I don't think many dancers get to do, because we're always so busy on stage, that actually looking at it from the front, I found it really beneficial as well. And I felt like I could learn a lot from the front of, as well, like just what this kind of stagecraft is, and things like how to use your chest on stage and all that kind of stuff, learning from my colleagues. So it was a really, really great experience, actually, even though I wasn't performing, I felt like I was still learning and getting I guess just another side of it that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, no, great. It's kind of, yeah, I can understand that. I've missed some shows, just never Nutcracker. And yeah, it is kind of bittersweet because you do get a chance to step back and learn. You know, getting to sit in the audience and realize how much something like eye line and, like you said, like chest presence and stuff like that really affects a show. So yeah, well, that's great. And then another question we have is, how do we stay in shape when we're injured? And I think that's different for everybody and everybody's injury. Like mine specifically, I really couldn't after my knee surgery. I pretty much had to be in bed with my leg up for 2 months. So obviously when that's happening, everything gets mushy. And it was before I had to fight really hard after the knee surgery. Like I would walk from my apartment to the studio, which was about an hour-long walk every day to try to get back in shape. And then I'd do exercises on top of that before class started. So for me, staying in shape during a big injury anyways like that, was kind of impossible. I just kind of had to focus on getting back in shape once I was out of shape. But for you guys, you experienced?
Yeah, mine kind of interesting was a little bit of the opposite, because when I had gotten mine done, obviously I was in bed for a good amount of time, like not putting any weight on the leg, but because there was hardware in it and the way that it was inside of the bone, I guess I needed to start walking pretty quickly so that my leg could get used to there being a rod inside of it. So I I lived on the bike a lot during like my PT. I did a lot of biking because like walking was really hard for a while. I'm sure you have the same problem with walking. Yeah. But yeah, mine was a little bit the opposite. I needed to start walking pretty quickly. So,
okay. Yeah. Chun Wai, you got anything?
So it was, well, I have several injuries in the first year. There's one injury that I tore my thumb ligament on stage when I threw a girl up, and then the girl was leaning back because I had to let go. And then so she laid on my thumb, so snapped back. And with that injury, at first I wouldn't, I thought it was just a small injury, a sprain, and so it will heal by itself. But after 10 days of swollen, it did not heal. I could barely even do like just a simple position like this. And so it turned out it was torn ligament. With that injury, I had decided myself to do surgery, just like how Kellen was saying that we have to decide if we want to do surgery or just heal by itself. With what I thought, a ligament torn it, and it's hard for them to just grow back, to my thumb. So I decided to do surgery. With that, actually somehow, because it was hand injury, so I was staying in shape with doing all my ballet class. Lower body parts is fine. And then with that, I did, except rehab, I did a lot of gym stuff. So that way it could get stronger. Somehow this hand is actually, the one that torn it is actually more stronger than another one now. The other one is more flexible and it's weaker. So yeah, that's how I stay in shape.
All right, great. Yeah, and actually, that's another thing with injuries. I feel like a lot of times when we come back from an injury, the thing that we injured ends up being the more stable body part in comparison to the outside. So like my left knee feels much more stable. I don't know stronger, but it's definitely more stable than my right knee, which has never had an operation done on it. So yeah, I do think it's kind of a weird plus that, you do all the strengthening to get back, and then everything there ends up seeming much stronger. And like Chun Wai said, maybe it has something to do with it's not as flexible, so it seems like it's just there for you. I don't know, but I've noticed that with pretty much all my injuries. Anyways, I'm gonna kind of jump to a new subject, and the reason why she's here with us is because she has experienced a very unique thing in being a mother as a principal ballerina, and what it was like to come back from pregnancy, what it was like dancing while she was pregnant, because she did about 4 months of that. So yeah, Karina, take it away.
Yes, so yes, I'm so happy to share that whole journey. Like I said before, I have been blessed of not being out of performances during my career, but this was my first time really being away from the stage for a while, for a long time. So yeah, so I danced for the first 3 months, and I did one of the most beautiful but hard roles. Then it was at the ballet Meyerling, and I was being thrown around, and of course it was a secret. I couldn't tell anybody until a week before we opened. I told Connor Walsh, who was my partner, and I just remember his eyes opening so big, and also telling the staff that I was pregnant. The first thing they say, "Are you able to perform?" And yes, I mean, that was that was an incredible journey, just because I've been one of those dancers that I just throw myself to any challenge. And during those 3 months, of course, I needed to be so careful, and so I was so afraid to even just to have a sleep in the floor, or also anything could happen during that time. But thank God it was an amazing shows, which of course I remember the last show I cried because I knew that it was gonna be months until I will be back on stage again. But I tried to do my classes almost every day. I have to say that people see you like a crazy person when you have your giant belly in class, but I remember feeling even better. Like if I would stay home, I would feel sick, and you know, I feel like my body needs the exercise, needs to move, and so I tried to do my ballet class until the last days, and when I went into labor, of course I was like, I have heard so many stories of dancers coming back from pregnancy or how long it take them. I was so afraid of what was going to be my journey. I have dancers, I know dancers that also stop dancing after having babies. And also I have seen dancers that they have an amazing career after being a mom. So of course I mean, what was going to be my life? But I think I was so excited to become a mother and a dancer. I have a blessing that I have this conversation with my mom, and she said, I will be here because you have many more years to share, you know, your talent with the audience. So she moved from Venezuela to here to help me with my daughter. So I knew immediately that I was going to be safe. I was going to be back on stage. But I have to say that I thought it was going to be much simpler. I knew that I was like, no, it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to come back so strong. My body, it has, you know, I can do anything. So I came back 3 weeks after having Julia. And I remember I went to the studio and I was ready to do my ballet class, and I did my first, you know, tango front, and I couldn't. Like my belly, my core was not strong. So I remember finishing that class. Actually, Rupert, my husband, taught that class. I was in tears the entire class, and I remember coming home, and he was like, "This is gonna be hard for you if you don't accept what's happening." So I feel like for me it was just more mentally to understand my new body and what I needed to slowly to do for coming back to the stage. Once again, I felt everybody said, and I came back really quick. I was on stage 3 months later. I did one of the princesses in Swan Lake, and that was the hardest thing I ever done. I remember being so afraid of, like, I felt like I was not strong enough yet to be jumping, or I did everything I could. I did cross training, which I think that was something so new for me. I was, I grew up just doing ballet classes and do your abs at home and stretch, and but I never saw myself doing weights or running or jumping, and I think that was a part of my training coming back. I guess, like I said before, we have this amazing coach, athletic coach, that is Aki, who he helped me to understand my new body with exercise, with new ways to be strong, especially from my core. It was hard because there's also a lot of extra time that you have to invest as a dancer, but also I was a mom, so I couldn't find that balance of I came home and I wanted to be with her, but I was like, I need to do my exercise. So, or even during the weekend before Julia, I will do yoga or Pilates or even massage therapies. And I couldn't do that anymore because I needed to be with her. So I think my challenge, not just my body because it was different, but it was also mentally to give myself time to know that I'm different, my body is different, and I have to understand that new journey that I was going through. It's been 2 years and I still feel like my body is different, but also have opened an entire different way to be on stage. I have to say that before I was so I was so intense and trying to find that perfection, and I will finish a show and I will come home and I still be, upset because I wasn't perfect. Now I feel like I'm on stage, I'm enjoying what I'm doing and loving who I am, but I come home and I'm a mom. So I have felt that it has been the most incredible journey, and I have been blessed to do both. And of course, I think I have to take my family and my mom and my husband who are my support, and also our amazing athletic trainers that were there for my tears, for my exercise, and sometimes we just need that. Sometimes we just need somebody to just listen to you and help you to understand your new journey through injuries or through pregnancy.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Karina. And one thing that you brought up was actually one of our questions, that the first time you were back on stage, it was scary. And the question was, what was it like the first time we were back on stage after being injured? And I can go ahead and get started with that one, because my first time really dancing back on stage was incredibly emotional, because 6 months prior to it, I didn't know if I would ever dance on stage again. And also, I was dancing next to Chun Wai, Harper Waters, and a guy that used to be in the company, Reese Kozakowski, and they were all in amazing shape. And I was still a little chubby, in my opinion, and I just remember feeling so stressed that I had to go out there and dance next to these 3 great dancers in amazing condition and look as good as them somehow, when I didn't expect to be doing a part like that for another few months. So I was really happy that I was able to come back, but it was definitely very emotional, and I was kind of proud of myself that I guess artistic felt comfortable enough to put me into a part like that and next to those dancers. But it was definitely emotional and stressful. I remember before the curtain went up in the second act, which is when we entered the stage, like tearing up a little bit. And them all kind of congratulating me and stuff and being there supportive of me. So yeah, that was my experience of coming back first time to stage. And then if anyone else would like to share your experience, Chun Wai.
So let's say the experience of me cramping on the stage, I have to come back in 3 days. So those few nights before my next performance, it was very hard to sleep, because whatever happened on stage, it keep running on your head, and as the dancer, without the accident, you already have to run probably the whole ballet, or like whatever you have the notes from the rehearsal, you will go through before you sleep. But with what happened on stage a few days ago and have to do it everything again. And this time there's no accident could happen. It was very hard to step on stage and do it again. But with the encouragement that with the encouragement from from parents, from the friend, from the staff, it really pushes you to another level. Like with also the Karina at PT, our PT, she also helped me a lot she was checking on me how much water am I drinking, but also not too much. Every 15 minutes, a sip of water. Those 2 days, it was like that intense. And then finally we performed. It was nerve-wracking, step on stage, but every single second I was thinking to save my energy, but also to perform my best to the audience at the same time. And after the performance also, I think all of us have the same experience of the first performance after getting injury is very emotional. Like we can overcome anything because that's how much we love ballet.
Yeah, thanks, Chun Wai. Anybody else? Madison?
Yeah, I think all of us that have dealt with having surgery and coming back from that, you know, there is a point where you question, is the injury going to come back? Like with me having surgery to release the inflammation within my tendon, I was like, is it going to get re-inflamed? And so I remember my first performance back doing midnight hours in Capelia was just so satisfying because I was like, it was worth it. And just the joy that I felt, I was like, I made the right decision. Even though I was a little nervous, I made the right decision to go through with surgery. And just that feeling was just so great.
Great. Yeah, I think that's kind of touched on all the questions that we had, unless one of the dancers wants to share something that we have not touched on.
Yeah, in the comment, I think there's one question about if we're getting really hurt badly during the performance, like let's say the experience, I cramping on stage again. I think all the dancers were ready to go on, and artistic staff, they have the final decision. And that show, after I walking off for my variation, my partner, Yuriko Kajia, she jumped in and finished my solo before her variation. So like every moment it could happen, and she just jumped on right away and she finished for me. And I was able to finish that act, luckily. And then the third act, one of the principal, Jared Matthew, he was on stage, in the audience watching, and he come up right away to replace my spot for third act, just in case if my back or arm get cramped during the pas de deux, that would be dangerous for both me and my partner. So that was the very fast decision we have to make for the bad injury happen on stage.
And to expand on that, I was actually a cover for Chun Wai, and I was backstage dancing a different part. I tore my hat and mustache off and I was about to run out, and then he said that he could finish the act. So usually you'll have a cover around that's kind of ready to go. We would probably get some kind of emergency rehearsal. Like if I was the only one there for it, they would have had to given me some kind of time with my partner before third act so the show could continue. Luckily we had another principal there that was already performing the role, didn't need any extra rehearsal, but normally we have a cover around to help, if that answers the question. So, yeah.
All right, well, I think that was great. Thank you, Aaron, for leading this discussion. Thank you to our panel of dancers for just sharing your thoughts and insights and stories on your journeys. I want to thank all of you viewers and audiences for joining us tonight. We can't say how much we appreciate your support and these abilities for us to keep connected even when we're all apart. So please be on the lookout. We've got a couple more of these dancer-led discussions coming up in a few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you again for your support, for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you all again soon, you know, digitally for now, and then hopefully someday back in the theater. But have a great night. Have a great 3-day weekend. And we'll see you again soon. Good night.